So this week's lessons is about the biological markers, therapy, genetics, psychosis, and etc. We were also assigned to watch Sweet Girl. So throughout the movie, Rachel went through trauma after losing her parents. Her mother fell ill with cancer and her father was stabbed to death at the subway. So it turns out na si Rachel was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD and dissociative identity disorder, which led her to believe she was her father and she was avenging the death of her mother. So all this time, Rachel was just hallucinating about her father. So nagkaroon siya ng psychological disorder dahil sa mga traumang pinagdaanan niya sa pagkamatay ng parents niya at sa mga nakikita niyang violent acts ng kanyang tatay. So PTSD can occur after a prolonged traumatic event that is very stressful, frightening, or painful experience. So dissociative identity disorder can develop as a result of loss of loved one or severe and prolonged childhood trauma such as physical or emotional abuse. We can avoid this psychological disorder if we can have a strong support system like our family and our friends.
We can avoid psychological disorders if we have a strong support system like our family and friends. In the movie we watch, which is Sweet Girl, in Rachel's case, she became an orphan at a young age. She wants justice for what has happened to her parents. She's prone to psychological disorders due to traumas and lack of a support system as well. We can see in the movie that she experienced some hallucinations and delusions along the way, and it is because it was triggered by her past experiences.
Rachel had a post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, a mental and behavioral disorder that can develop as a result of witnessing a traumatic event such as sexual assault, warfare, traffic accidents, child abuse, domestic violence, or other threats to a person's life. And dissociative identity disorder or DID is a mental health condition in which people have two or more distinct personalities. At different times, these identities govern a person's behavior. It can cause memory gaps and other issues as a connection to our topic. Biological markers are molecules that are involved in the onset of a psychological disorder. Also, psychological disorders are recessive genes that take many generations to manifest or activate. It is not the disorder itself but the proclivity to develop one, and it determines by your past experience. Rachel had a psychological disorder that became active in her generation as a result of what happened to her parents, even though cancer is something she can inherit from her mother. Family is our support system. If that's how she grew up, it's not out of the question that it will happen to her.
Rachel developed psychosis after her mother's death. In our topic, psychosis is the term used to describe when people lose some contact with the reality. Even after the death of her father, she still thinks that her father is alive. She can still see him, talk to him, and she still thinks that her father is with her. Like Rachel with psychological disorders, cannot enjoy life anymore. After all the trauma, fear, and hallucination that happens to her. We can avoid psychological disorders if we have a strong support systems, like our family and friends. In Rachel's case, both of her parents died. Once a psychological disorder triggered, it will not stop.
In the movie Sweet Girl, I noticed that Rachel Cooper and Ray Cooper, her father, share a similar personality trait. So they are both aggressive. So they are threatening. They talk because of how they talk and the way that they act. So I remember in our previous lessons that we learned that genetics is a very good way. It's a very good way to understand human behavior or psychological disorder because it plays role in development of a person. So the aggressive trait of Rachel Cooper came from her father. So and Rachel hallucinations came from his experience where she witnessed the death of both of his parents that may result to his aggressive trait. and that lead us to killing 5 men and to avenge.
In our lesson, it tells na ang behavior ay hindi nakukuha sa genes. Sa experience pa rin nakabase ang lifestyle mo, kaya sobrang laki ng epekto ng childhood experience sa isang tao. And sa movie na napanood natin, sa Sweet Girl, nakita doon ni Rachel Cooper ang paghihirap ng magulang niya. Nandun siya nung namatay yung nanay niya, nagkaroon siya ng post-traumatic stress which leads to hallucinations, kaya pakiramdam niya, buhay pa yung tatay niya at siya yung tatay niya. Hindi siya tumigil hanggat hindi niya nakukuha yung justice na gusto ng tatay niya for her mom. He was only 15 years old nung namatay yung both parents niya at saksi siya sa bawat paghihirap na dinanay ng nanay niya, lalo na yung tatay niya. Kaya na rin siguro naging ganun yung behavior niya, naging psychopath na siya. Kasi hindi na siya nakakaramdam ng guilt kapag pumapatay siya ng tao. Basta ang goal niya ay makuha yung hustisya na gusto ng tatay niya.
Rachel developed a psychological disorder. She is hallucinating for 2 years because of what happened to her mother and father. She didn't have a chance to avoid having a psychological disorder for the reason of she doesn't have a strong support system or even friends. Her psychological disorder has been triggered since the day that her father died in front of her, and it continued and it became severe.
Si Rachel, para na siyang may psychosis kasi nagkakaroon siya ng delusions of hallucinations. Nakikita niya si Ray at nakakarinig siya ng boses ng tatay niya. Siguro dahil na din sa trauma, kaya na-trigger yung ganong side niya. Sabi sa lesson, pwede namang ma-avoid yung pagkakaroon ng psychological disorder basta may strong support system from family and friends. Pero dahil sa nangyari sa parents ni Rachel, naging reason yon para ma-trigger yung disorder na meron siya. At dahil sa sobrang takot at sakit at trauma na nakuha niya sa pagkawala ng parents niya, nagtuloy-tuloy na yung disorder na meron siya at pinatay niya na isa-isa yung mga taong may kasalanan sa pagkawala ng parents niya. Sabi din sa lesson na yung psychological disorders in recessive genes and it may take many generations to come out or to be activated. Hindi dahil sa disorder pero dahil may tendency na magkaroon ng ganong disorder lalo na kung may traumatic experience na pwedeng makapagpa-trigger ng isang psychological disorder ng isang tao.
So we can see that Rachel, nasamahan siya ng family, diba? Right? No influence of any violence in their family. But simula nung namatay yung mother niya because of the cancer and they thought na mabubuhay pa siya because of bioprom. And then si Jason Momoa o yung dad ni Rachel ay nagbanta kay Kiloy. Papatayin siya and this shows na nagkaroon ng emotional influence both in Rachel and Jason. And at that time, hindi pa natitrigger yung possible psychological disorder in Rachel na not until na namatay si Jason. Doon na nagsimula nag-trigger yung psychological disorder in Rachel. Because of the death of her parents, nagkaroon ng mga developmental influence that causes psychological disorder.
A mental and behavioral disease called post-traumatic stress disorder can arise from witnessing horrific events including sexual assault, child abuse, domestic violence, or other risks to a person's life. Rachel experienced PTSD, a mental health illness known as dissociative identity disorder. It causes people to have two or more separate personalities. These identities influence a person's conduct at various times. DID may result in memory lapses and other problems. Different forms of psychotherapy can be helpful for those with DID. The tendency to acquire a disorder, rather than the disorder itself, is influenced by your prior experiences. Despite the fact that she can inherit cancer from her mother, Rachel had a psychiatric problem that grew prevalent in her generation as a result of what happened to her parents. Family is our support system. If she grew up like that way, it's not unlikely that it will also happen to her.